So you guys did a great job trying to find information about these functions, and most of you are able to hit them right on the head. Right, so the max function helps us to find the highest number in a range of cells. And these are, um, all of the different types of arguments you could put in there. They're really the exact same thing as we've been looking at with sum, product, and average. You can give it a list of numbers, a list of cell ranges, or most commonly, we'll give it a range of cells. You're going to see the range operator used a lot in this with all of the functions we're going to talk about. So that's max. Max finds the highest number in a range of cells, the highest, the largest, the greatest, all great words to use with this function. One thing to note, it's the max function. You can't call it maximum. Largest, it's max. Okay, so the names of the functions do need to be exactly as you find them and as I give them to you. The other one you looked at was min. Min is the opposite. It finds the lowest number in a range of cells, the lowest, the smallest, the least, that type of deal. Same arguments that we've seen in the past. Most likely, you're probably going to use it with the range of cells like this. And then we looked at median and mode. The median function finds the number in a middle of the range of numbers. One of the neat things about this, if you remember back to elementary school math, I think it was elementary school math, when you guys talked about the median of a set of numbers, if you remember, you had to put those numbers in order first. If you remember that, we had to sort them and put them in order from lowest to highest, and then you could try to find the number in the middle of the range. The nice thing about the formula here in Sheets is that you don't have to pre-sort the numbers. The formula itself, the function itself, median, will figure it out for you. It will sort them, put them, and then find the number in the middle. So you do not have to pre-sort your numbers to use the median, which is really nice. And the mode, if you remember for your elementary school math, is that the mode is the most commonly occurring number in a range. Which one occurs most frequently? Okay, so max, min, median, and mode. Median and mode also take the exact same types of arguments that we have seen over and over again so far. A list of numbers, a list of cell range, a list of numbers, a list of cell references, or range of cells, right? So as a real quick recap, sum, product, average, max, min, median, and mode are the functions we've kind of talked about so far. Hopefully, you can see that right now, a lot of these functions have a very similar pattern to them as far as how to use it, right? They all have the same pattern of structure, equals, name of function, and then in parentheses, the range of cells that it's going to need to work with. So at this point, I think it starts to get easier to be able to pick up new functions because the general idea of how to work with them doesn't change. It's just that the purpose of the function changes, and then maybe even just the arguments. We're going to see in a little while that the arguments are going to change on us. But up front here, I think it's actually kind of simple to pick up new functions. Okay. All right. One thing I want you to just pay attention to, and we may see this as we give you some more things to play with, is I want you to try to avoid doing more work than you need to or duplicating work for the spreadsheet. Here's an example of what I'm talking about. I've seen people do this, equals sum, E2 plus E3 plus E4 plus E5. First, I will tell you that if you do this, you will get the correct answer. However, my least favorite phrase in all of computer science education is, but Mr. P, it works. I think I've said this to you before. Yeah, it works, but this is not exactly what we want to do. And let me show you what's going on here. We said before that if you wanted to give a list of cells, what you really needed to do was put commas in between the numbers, right? E2, comma, E3, comma, E4, comma, E5. If we do this, if you remember your friend PEMDAS, the first thing that wants to happen in PEMDAS is anything inside of a parentheses. So in this case, what's going to happen is that it's going to want to do this addition. It will add together the value in E2, E3, E4, and E5. So you'll get this. Let's say for the sake of argument, these numbers add up to 25. Great. And now it wants to pass the 25 and it wants to give it to the sum function, right? Go ahead, sum function, please add 25. The result of that is going to be 25 because there's only one number here. And if you add one number to nothing, you get the number, right? But what essentially you've done is you've done the math for the sum function. You did the math ahead of time in this equation and then just gave it to sum. You're really duplicating your work. You're doing more work than you need to. You don't have to do this. So I'm going to suggest that we try to avoid that by doing one of two things. If you wanted to add these numbers together, you should have done one or two things. Okay? You could have just skipped the sum function altogether and just done the math. Just put the equation in here. Or you should have ignored the addition operators here, and you should have just let the sum function do its work, equals sum e2 colon e5. Or if you felt the need to lay them out individually, you should have done it with commas, not with a plus sign, again, with the addition operator. At the end of the day, does this, and this all get you the same answer? Yes, it does. But let's use the functions the way they were designed and properly, okay? So just try to maybe avoid doing duplicate work here. I think it's going to help you just kind of keep things straight. Okay. I want to move to another set of functions that maybe are not necessarily math related. Because a lot of the things that we've done so far, you could maybe substitute an equation for, things like sum, product, and average. But this is not necessarily math related, but very helpful. The next couple of functions I want to look at here all have to do with counting things. The question really becomes, how many products are we selling in the cafeteria? How many students are in the class? I don't want to sit here and I don't want to have to manually count things on the spreadsheet. That would be a real waste of time. What I would like to do is let the spreadsheet do it for me. So if I come back to the spreadsheet here for a second, and if I asked you how many products do we sell in the cafeteria, could you sit here and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8? Oh, there are 8 products there. Could you? Sure. But at this point, you did the work, not the spreadsheet. Okay. The other reason why I don't really want to do that is, again, this is a small example, but what if you had hundreds of items in the cafeteria? I do work all the time on data and information with spreadsheets for the entire school. I don't want to count how many students are in the freshman and sophomore classes by myself. I'm going to put the information in the spreadsheet and let the spreadsheet do the counting. Okay? There are a couple of different count methods that we could use, and let's talk a little bit about them. Okay. The first one simply is called count. The count function is used to count the number of cells in a range that contain numbers, that contain numeric values. So the name, I'll come back and show you that in a second. The count function equals count. And then inside the parentheses are really the same list of arguments we've been looking at. I'll be honest, most likely you're probably just going to use the range of cells like this. Okay. The count function is only going to work, and it's only going to actually count something if there is a numeric value, if there's a number in the range. Okay. Let me drop over to the spreadsheet and just let's take a look at that for a second. Okay. I'm going to go here. And if you wanted to do this with me, you could, to practice this and just see what it looks like. Okay. If I want to count how many items are in the cafeteria, let's start with count. And then we could give it a range of cells. Watch what happens if I try to count on the product names. If I try to do this, equals count A2 to A9. Please count those items for me. The answer that comes out is 0. Huh, well, what's going on there? I told it and I pointed it at the products we have in the cafeteria. The count function will always only look for values that are numbers. So in this case, in cells A2 to A9, there are no numbers. Okay, so it will give you back 0. It did exactly what you told it to do. If I instead count the prices in B2 to B9 equals count B2 colon B9, now I get an 8. Okay, so when you're trying to use the count function, please make sure that whatever range of cells you are pointing at, whatever range of cells you give the count function, they have to be numbers in there, if that's what you're trying to count. So just be aware of that. I've had folks who try to do this and they don't understand what's going on. Why is it 0? There clearly are things on the spreadsheet here. It's probably that. Okay, so the count function will count cells that contain numeric values. That's a key point to keep in mind. Okay, let's come back over to our notes. So there's your count function. Used to count count cells that contain numbers in a range. The second form of count that I want to look at is called count A. Count A will count count the number of cells containing almost anything, numbers, dates, or text. The way I like to think about it is count me the number of cells in this range that are not blank, that are not empty. If there's something in the cell, please count it. So this is count A, all one word. And the arguments that go in the parentheses are the exact same thing we've been looking at. It could be a list of numbers. It can be a list of cell references. Or in this case, I have on the screen here a range of cells. Okay, so the count A function will count any cell in the range that contains something. So if I wanted to use count A, now I could give count A this list here, equals count A, A2 colon A9. I could give it this because there's something in those cells, and I bet we're going to get 8. There we go. Okay. So the count A is a nice variation of count. I like this. I've used this quite a lot, especially when I'm working with text-based items. Let's say I just had a list of your names, but I didn't have necessarily your ID number on a sheet. I could easily count you using the count A function. Count A works on things that are numeric as well. Equals count A B2 colon B9. That will also give me an 8 as well. Okay, so there's the count A function in use. So count and count A. Important to know the difference, folks, that they don't do the exact same thing. Count only looks for values in that range that have a numeric number, a numeric value. Count A will look for values that are there, any value basically, as long as the cell is not blank. Okay? So that's count and count A. Okay. The third count function that I want to look at is called count blank. Count blank is basically the opposite of count A. Count blank will count the number of empty cells or blank cells in a selected range. The name of the function is count blank, all one word, and it takes the same type of arguments we've been looking at so far. The list of cells, a list of values, or a range of cells. Most likely you're going to probably use the range of cells like I have here. Okay, so the count A and count blank basically do the opposite of each other. Count A counts the cells that have something in it. Count blank counts the number of empty cells in a range. So count A, count blank. There's a fourth count that I want to talk about, but we're not ready for that yet. We'll get to that in a future video. And just to play with this a little bit. Unfortunately, I don't have any empty cells here in this particular range. If I point, let's say, at this range here, there's nothing in there. There it is. There are 7 empty cells here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There are 7 empty cells here, so that's count blank. If I count these cells here that have something in them, it gives you back a 0. Okay, so that's count blank. If you wanted to count empty cells, I suppose a question might be, Mr. P, why would I ever want to do this? At some point before we had plus portals, I used to do my grade book in a spreadsheet. And one of the things that I would do is if I was grading your grade book, grading an assignment, and you completed the assignment and got a grade on it, I'd put the grade in there, 20 out of 20 points. If you, for somehow, earned yourself a 0, you got no questions correct, you were cheating on an exam, for whatever reason, you did not do what I asked you to do, and if I gave you a 0, I would enter a 0 in the cell. If you did not yet complete the assignment, I would just leave it blank. So blanks in my gradebook indicated that a student had not completed an assignment. In reality, a blank was different than a 0. 0 means you earned a 0. Blank means that you just hadn't completed the assignment yet. So there are times where if I wanted to see how many students had yet to finish the assignment, I would maybe use count blank. And I could look down a list of homework number 7, and I could look down a list and say, 3 students have not completed the assignment by using count blank. Okay, so count A, count blank. Those are our next 3 functions I'd like to play with and practice with. So here's our total list right now, and we're going to continue to add to this going forward. But here we are. Very quickly, we have sum, product, average, median, mode, max, min, count A, count blank. 10 functions real quick. Okay, they all follow a very similar pattern. They have slight differences as far as what they do and their purpose and their function, but for the most part, I think that they all look very similar. So once you kind of understand how functions work, and now that we know a little bit more about the structure of a function, this hopefully should come real quick. So today I'm going to ask you to maybe play around a little bit in your spreadsheet, and I'll throw some questions up on Classroom for you to maybe use some of these functions.